The healing brush tool is located over here and its shortcut is J. It won't let you work. It's showing a stop sign because I need to select a layer first. So I'm going to select the image layer. Now it's showing the round healing brush just fine. I'm going to zoom in on this corner to show you the basic function of the healing brush first. Let's say I don't want the windows over here. Instead, I want this pattern of the wall. I'll make sure sample is selected over here. Press and hold Alt on my keyboard. This will give you this crosshair. And then I'll take my cursor over here to sample this part of the wall. So with my Alt option still pressed, I'll left click on my mouse once. So the healing brush has successfully sampled this part of the wall. So I'm going to go ahead and start painting over the windows. I'm going to hold on to my left mouse button and then press and hold Shift on my keyboard to get a straight line and then start painting to the right. As I'm painting, you can also see this crosshair is also moving alongside the brush. It's just indicating the sample pixels the healing brush is using at present to paint. I'm gonna zoom out and show you that nobody could have ever imagined that there were two windows over here. So this was our before and this is our after. I've already explained these set of options in my previous tutorial, which is Spot Healing Brush tool. I will link that tutorial in the description so you can check that out. So let's move on and learn the next thing. I'm gonna go ahead and sample this flower pot. Notice that the brush size is much smaller than the flower pot. I can increase the brush size and sample the entire flower pot, but I deliberately choose not to do so. So I'll go ahead and use this small brush to sample the flower pot over here. I'll hold Alt on my keyboard and left click once. So you're getting a very little sample with this small healing brush size. But now if I increase my brush size by pressing the right square bracket on my keyboard, watch what happens. It's giving us a preview of a bigger sampling area, although we have sampled a small spot. So you can adjust the sampling size both before and after sampling a region. Next we are going to study the aligned option. Let's see what happens when it's unchecked. So I'm going to click and drag to the right. It's gradually revealing the adjacent green flower, then the red. But let's say I abruptly ended over here accidentally and I wanted to go all the way to the yellow flower. If we use the healing brush again, it's still going to show us the original sample of the orange flowers. And if I click and drag, it's going to start painting from here again. So you see the orange, then the green, and so on. So this is what happens when aligned is unchecked. The healing brush starts with the original sample each time you click and drag. Let's see what happens if we check the aligned option. Then I'm going to sample the same orange flowers, press Alt and then click, and then start painting with it. I'm going to leave it there. And then if I bring my healing brush once again, it's going to remember the initial clicking point and start painting from where we left off. Next we have two documents open. One is this and the other one is this. What we want to achieve is that we want to take a sample from this document and paint it on the other document. So I'll go ahead and Alt click over here. So with this sample, I'm going to go to the first document. And then just paint. Next we are going to discuss about clone source. If I click over here, this panel pops up. You can see that there are 5 clone stamps here, but only the first one is selected. So with this first clone stamp, I want to sample this green star. So Alt and click. Then I'm going to paint this somewhere over here. Now I'm going to select the second clone stamp. And as you can see, the healing brush is empty. So for the second healing brush or the second clone stamp, I'm going to sample this orange star. Let's paint with this sample. I'm going to take one last clone stamp and then sample this blue star. And then paint it. If you remember, this clone stamp sampled this green star. So let's click on it and check out if this gives us the same sample. It does. Let's try out the second one, which should give us the orange star. and the third one with the blue star. Next, we'll learn about the position coordinates of the sampled source. Let's say if I sample this green star, its horizontal or X position is 267 pixels from the origin, and the vertical or Y position is 545 pixels from the origin. Then if I sample the blue star, its horizontal or X position is 597 pixels from the origin, and its vertical or Y position is 525 pixels from the origin. Next, we'll look at flip horizontally and flip vertically. For that, I'm going to increase the brush size and sample the whole artwork. First, I'm going to paint normally without any flipping. Now if I click on flip horizontally, you can see that the sample source has flipped. I'm going to paint with this horizontal flip here. I'm going to turn off horizontal flip for the moment and click on vertical flip. And you can see it has flipped from top to bottom. Let's see what happens if I turn on both the vertical and the horizontal flips. So you can see it has flipped both vertically and horizontally. Next, we'll look at the scaling options. First, I'm going to keep it at its default 100 and then sample the girl. So this gives us the replica of the girl with the exact same size. But let's bring the size down to 73. Since both the boxes are linked, when I change the value of width, the value of height also changed. And don't worry about the artwork shrinking down. It's just giving us the preview of the sample beforehand. So as soon as I release my mouse over here, it goes back to normal. Now you can see the small sample size inside the healing brush. I'm going to sample the girl again. And this time, I'm going to unlink width and height. We'll make the width 77 and the height 148. And you can clearly see how deformed the preview looks. I'm just going to increase the brush size so you can see the full thing. Next, we are going to look at source angle or rotate clone source. 0 degree is the default angle, which basically means there is no rotation of the source. So if I go ahead and sample the source, it's going to give me an exact replica of the source. Let's undo this. Now as I change my angle to some higher values, just see what's happening. We get a good rotation of the head in the preview. I'm gonna undo this. Next, what I'm gonna show you is that you can also combine options. Let's say we have the present value for rotation, and in addition to that, you also want to decrease the scale. Of course, you could have chosen any other set of options in the combination. And this icon brings the values of all these three options to their default value. Next, we are going to look at Show Overlay. Let's see what happens when it's checked. So I'm just going to go ahead and sample the source. Now as I move the healing brush, we can continuously see the sample source inside the healing brush. Now if I uncheck this, we can no longer see the sampled source, but it's still there. So if I click, you can see the girl. And if you check it back on, we are going to see the preview again. Next, we can also change the opacity of the preview. Let's try 50. Although the preview has turned semi-transparent, the sampled source has not. So if I click, we get the source with its full opacity. We also have blend mode options for the preview. Right now it is at its default normal, but you can change that to any of these. Let's try difference. And of course this is just the preview because when I click, we get the usual color. Let's undo that and try lighten. Undo that as well. Next we have the invert option. What it does is that it inverts the colors of the preview. And of course you can try out the invert option for all the blend modes. Next we have the clipped option. Let's see what it does when it's checked. I'm going to go ahead and sample this region. So Alt and click. So with the clipped option checked, we can only preview the sampled area within the circle of the brush. So as I reduce the brush size, the sampled preview also becomes smaller. I should probably mention that my recording software is making an error with the brush size. The outline now should have been here and not here. I'm going to increase the brush size now so that you can see more of the sample. So this is what clipped does. It clips the sampled preview within the size of the brush. Let's uncheck clipped and see what happens. Now you see the entire image even outside the brush, but it's only going to paint the brush area. I'm gonna undo this. Next I'm gonna show auto hide. Let's see what happens when auto hide is unchecked. And for that I'm gonna use the same sample. As I click and drag, it doesn't hide the image preview because some people might want to have a visual aid other than this crosshair to let them know where they're painting. I'm gonna undo that and then check auto hide. So as soon as I press and hold my left mouse button, the preview outside the healing brush disappears. And as I release the mouse, the preview comes back. Now we are going to look at the inbuilt blend modes of the healing brush tool. The default blend mode is of course normal, and 9 out of 10 times you're going to be using this. To demonstrate the normal blend mode, I'm going to be using this example. I'm going to take a sample of this texture over here. And then I will paint it on this blue and yellow gradient. You can clearly see that the normal blend mode is making the texture blend with the background. The texture over here is more bluish and dark, and over here it's yellowish and bright. So the normal blend mode forces the sample to adapt with the background. Let's undo this and then I'm gonna show you the next blend mode, which is replace. We are using the same sample and I'll just paint on the gradient. You can see that the texture doesn't adapt with the surrounding. It just paints the exact copy of the sample. Now regarding the next set of blend modes, I don't use them much because I don't know the proper way to use them with relation to the healing brush tool. Instead, I'm gonna skip and show you the color blend mode. Let's take a sample of this character. And then what it's gonna do is that it's gonna take the hue and saturation information from here and the brightness information from here. So let's see what the end product looks like. So it has retained its color from this character and it has got the brightness information from this green box. And if I paint over here, it's gonna have the same color but darker. The next blend mode is luminosity. Let's take a sample. The luminosity blend mode takes the luminosity or brightness information from here and the hue and saturation information from here. Let's check that out. And if I try the sample over here, it's gonna give us a yellowish result. Next, we'll look at diffusion. You can partly think of it as how well the sample is mixing or blending with the background. And the other thing to keep in mind is the rim of the brush. I'll show you what I mean. I'll take a sample first, maybe this flower. When the diffusion is low, there is less mixing of the sample along the rim of the brush. I'll just take my brush over here and see what it produces. One thing to take note of is that along the rim of the brush, we have these yellow and white circular elements. And since we have the least diffusion over here, the sample won't mix that well with them. So I'll click here once. At this point, you might be confused as to what to make of it. It's alright, let me just show you an example with the highest diffusion, which will then make the concept clear. So I'm gonna undo this and max out the diffusion. Now if you click over here, you can see that the rim mixing with the yellow and white elements way better than what we had before. So the white and the yellow colors are blending in pretty well. So this was with the least diffusion of 1 and this one with the highest diffusion of 7. One more thing left to talk about is that all the blend modes have this diffusion option except replace. One more instance where we cannot control diffusion is when we use legacy. So let's click on that, and the diffusion option is gone. Actually, legacy has its own inbuilt diffusion of medium strength. To try that out, I need to get a sample. Then let's paint on the same region. I'm gonna undo this. There's also an exception where legacy won't work, and that is when we use replace. Next, we are going to discuss source. Sampled is what we have been using all this time. We take our cursor, press Alt and then click to get a sample. So the sample acts as the source for painting. Let's delete that. The other kind of source is pattern. We get an extra option over here where we can choose from a collection of patterns. I'm going to expand grass and choose this. And then you can paint with this grass. Next, we have this example. Here we have a carrot, a brinjal, and this yellow background. And all these three elements are composed in a single layer. I'm going to sample the brinjal. And let's paint it over here. But it has ruined my original image by painting over it. We don't want to use such a destructive method, and here is where the sample layer option comes in play. We have the same example, but this time the image is distributed in 3 layers. This is our background, this is our carrot, this is our brinjal, and this is just an empty layer for correction. Let's select the empty layer, and then over here I'm going to select current layer. Now I'm going to try sampling this brinjal. So Alt click, but it hasn't sampled anything. What's the matter? It's because for sample layer, only current layer is selected. So it's telling Photoshop to sample elements from the layer which is currently selected. And the layer which is currently selected is empty. The brinjal is not located in this layer. So to sample the brinjal, you have to select the brinjal layer to make it the current layer. Let's try sampling it, see if it works. And it does. And likewise, if we want to sample this carrot, we have to select the carrot layer and make it the current layer. And this works just fine. Now you can do one of the two things. You can paint the carrot on the same layer as the carrot, or you can go to this empty layer and paint over here. Next, we have current and below. For the sake of this example, I'm going to select the carrot layer. So the carrot layer is now the current layer. And what is below this layer? This yellow background. We could have more layers below the current layer, but to keep it simple, we have just one. Now let's try sampling this carrot. Can we do that? Yes, we can, because the option allows us to sample elements from the current layer, and the carrot is located in the current layer. Let's try sampling this yellow background. Alt and click. If I bring it over here, you can see that it has sampled the yellow background as well. Why are we able to do so? Because the option says that we are able to sample everything which is below the current layer, and the yellow background is indeed below the current layer. Can we sample this brinjal? Let's see. But it couldn't sample the brinjal, and the reason is quite simple. The brinjal is located above the current layer. The last option is all layers. In this example, the background layer is selected, but now it doesn't matter what layer is selected or not. So I'll be able to sample this brinjal, this carrot as well, and then I can paint this on the correction layer. Next, we have ignore adjustment layer, and for that we have this image on the bottom layer. On top of that, I've added a posterize adjustment layer. And last, we have this empty layer for correction. I'm going to select the layer and see the result when the option is turned off. I'm going to go ahead and sample the face. You can see it has sampled the image along with the effect of the posterize adjustment layer. This time, I'll turn on the option. Let's sample the face again. This time it has only sampled the original image without the effect of the posterize adjustment layer. And this is all I have for today. Make sure to check the other videos. I'll see you next time. Bye.